Today's lesson is Module 2, Lesson 18, Least Common Multiple and Greatest Common Factor. We note least common multiple using LCM and greatest common factor using GCF. You might remember that from earlier grades. This lesson will be split up into 2 days because we will practice 2 different forms of finding the LCM and GCF. So the first thing we're going to do is start off our lesson with some definitions. If you remember back in lesson 17, we talked about what factors were and what multiples were, and now we're going to put those into place here in this lesson. So our first definition is going to be GCF. And the greatest common factor is the greatest whole number that is not 0, that is common or the same factor of 2 or more numbers. And then over here in my little think bubble, what I want you to think about is multiplication facts. This will help you better understand and better determine that common factor. So the example that we're going to look at is 15 and 30. If I wanted to find common factors of these 2 numbers, then what I'm going to do is list out all the multiplication expressions that would result in the answer of 15. So I'm going to start with 1 and 15. If I multiply 1 times 15, I get 15. And I like to put the little symbol in there so that I'm remembering that I'm multiplying. Then I know that 2 can't divide into 15 because it's not an even number. I know that 3 can divide into 15 using my divisibility rules because 1 plus 5 is 6, and I know that 6 can be divided by 3. So I know 3 goes into 15, and if I multiply 3 times 5, I get 15. 4 doesn't go into 15. 5 does, but I already have 5 listed. 6 is not a factor of 15, nor 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12. Neither is 13 or 14, and 15 is, but I already have it listed here. So I know I'm done with 15. Now I can go over to 30, and again, I'm going to think back on my divisibility rules. I always can start with 1 times whatever number it is. Then I can think, well, it's an even number, so I know 2 will, and 2 times 15 is 30. If I add these 2 numbers together, I get 3. So I know 3 is divisible by 3. So I know 3 is a factor. And if I multiply 10 times 3, I get 30. 4 is not a factor. 5 I know would be a factor because it ends in 0. So I think to myself, what times 5 gives me 30? And I know that that's 6. If you notice on this 15, my smaller numbers are on the left, my larger numbers are on the right, and the same here. And I know that I've covered all the factors because these 2 are so close. There's no numbers in between them. And as it goes back up, those are the only other factors that would be in 30. So now what I need to do is circle all of them that are common. There's a 1 in both. There's a 3 in both. There's a 5 in both. And there's a 15 in both. Now, according to my definition, I want the greatest or the biggest, the largest number in this, which is 15. So the GCF is 15. And I also like to put a triangle around those just so I can reference back to that. The next definition that we're going to go over is least common multiple. And least common multiple is noted by LCM. And that is the smallest number that is greater than 0, that is a multiple of each number. And then I reminded you in my think bubble that when we talked about multiples in the previous lesson, that we talked about skip counting. So that's what we will do to find multiples. We will skip count. In this example, we're going to look at the number 4 and the number 7. And I like to start with just maybe 5 or 6 numbers, and I like to put in the spaces so that I can remember how many I've gotten written down in each one. So I'm going to start with 4, and I'm going to skip count. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and I'm going to start, and then I'm going to go to 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. And I can see that so far I have nothing that matches. So I'm going to go back to my smaller number, and I'm going to try a few more. So after 20 would come 24, 28, 32. Now, when I look at these two lines, I've already noticed that these two numbers are the same. There are no other numbers that are the same that are smaller. So then I know that my answer for LCM is 28. So now if you go ahead and take out today's lesson in your math book, we are on lesson 18, least common multiple and greatest common factor. It starts off with the same definitions that I had already given you in your notebook today. The greatest common factor of two whole numbers, both not 0, is the greatest number that is a factor of each number. The greatest common factor of two whole numbers, A and B, is denoted as GCF A, comma B. The least common multiple of two whole numbers is the smallest whole number greater than 0 that's multiple of each number. The least common multiple of two whole numbers is A and B, denoted by LCM A, comma B. So in our first example here that we're going to do together, they want us to find the greatest common factor of 12 and 18. And it says list the factor pairs in order, helps ensure no common factors are missed. Start with 1 multiplied by the number. So 1 times 12. Then next I'm going to, I know it's even, so I know 2 times 6. And then if I add 1 and 2 together, I get 3. So I know that that's divisible by 3. So 3 times 4. And there are no numbers between 3 and 4, so I know I've listed all the factors. Now I'm going to go on to 18. And again, I'm going to start with 1 times 18. Then it's even, so I'm going to go on to 2 times 9. And because 1 plus 8 is 9, I know 9 is divisible by 3. Then I know 3 times 6. 18 is not divisible by 4, and because it doesn't end in a 5 or 0, I know it's also not divisible by 5. And then my next number would be 6, so I know that I've listed all of the factors so far. So now I'm going to circle all of these according to my directions that appear in both. So I circle the 1, the 2, the 3, the 6. And then it says put a triangle around the greatest. So the GCF is 6. 6 is the greatest common factor of 12 and 18. Feel free to pause this video anytime that you need to in order to review anything that you've heard, or if you need extra time to write things down. We're going to go on to the next page now. We're going to go to example 2, and we're going to find the least common multiple of 12 and 18. So it's asking us to list out the first 10 multiples of 12 and the first 10 multiples of 18. Now, you may need a calculator for this if you don't know how to skip count by 12s and 18s, and that's fine. So skip counting is the same as repeated addition. So you would just keep adding those numbers together. I'm going to start with 12, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84, 96, 108, 120. Then I'm going to do my skip counting by 18, 18, 36, 54, 72, 90, 108, 126, 144, 162, 180. Now, my next direction says to circle all the multiples that appear on both lists. So I have 36 on both lists. I have 72 on both lists. I have 108 on both lists. Now this one is a little bit different than the one we did before because we want the least or the smallest. So the smallest of all of these numbers is 36. So my LCM is 36. For today's assignment, I would like for you to get with a partner, and for station 1, I'm not going to have these posted around the room just because of space and time, but I'm going to change the directions a little bit. I want you to choose 2 of these problems listed below, work it out with a partner, and then I want you to come back to your video and check your answers. I will have the answers listed for each one so you can check your answers. Remember, don't cheat yourself. Make sure that you're actually practicing these because it will help you as we progress through the curriculum. On the next page, it says to choose 1. And we'll go ahead and stick with this direction. You're going to just choose 1 of these problems. Again, solve it with a partner, and then come back to the video and try and check your answer and make sure it's correct. Then I want you to go on to station 2. Station 2 says to list the multiples and find the least common multiple of these. And again, I want you to choose 2. I want you to choose 2 from this list here. Then you can come back and check your answer, and then you can choose 1 out of A, B, and C that's on this page. And there's also a choice of D and E on the next page. Please do not do stations 3 and 4. We will cover information on those 2 stations tomorrow. So make sure that you're doing stations 1 and 2. Remember, on your first choice, you're going to pick 2, and on your second choice, you're going to pick 1. If you have any questions, please feel free to come and see me.